Hi, and welcome back to Popversations. I'm Eve, and this is my husband,
Ross.
And today we wanted to talk about Wonder Woman 1984. We've both seen the first one, and we watched the second one really recently, and we just had a lot of thoughts about it, so we thought we'd just discuss it a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So what were some things that you liked about the new one?
Well, the movie starts off pretty good, actually. I really like the first opening sequence of when Wonder Woman is a child, and she is doing this awesome horse race, triathlon thing, and she's like a little child keeping up with adults. A little unbelievable, but yet it's like they make it believable enough. And at the end, she gets dismounted off of her horse and has to slide down a slide to kind of cheat and get back on her horse. And then the lady, the queen of the Amazons, she says she pulls her right at the end when she's about to win and stops her from winning and says, "Hey, you cheated. That's not the way to win." And that was a really, really good part of the movie. But honestly, it really didn't fit with the rest of the movie. It never really came back to it.
That message never really came back. I think the only callback to it that you could say was that Max Lord was trying to take the easy way of being successful.
And honestly, I would have rather just had a whole movie of just that child and her growing up, and maybe Gal Gadot and more about the Amazons, kind of like how the first movie was. And I would have watched that, or it would have been good as a short, but they could have honestly cut that best part of the movie out of the movie.
That's true. I liked the first one that it kind of was going back and forth a little bit, and I think they could have done that in this one, and I think the effect would have been just as good, but they would have just had a different a message going along with it instead of just her backstory, and it could have ran through the whole movie and culminated at the end somehow.
At least tie it back kind of somehow, or have Gal Gadot say something a nod to it, hey, when I was a child, I tried taking the easy way out or something like that.
Yeah, because then they start talking about the lasso and truth a lot, and that doesn't really go with that at all.
Yeah, and the lasso of truth really just never told the truth. It was more just an awesome lasso / bulletproof helicopter thingy. And
well, that's one of the things I liked about the movie, actually, was I think something that they did pretty well was just showing how graceful and how great she is with the lasso, and actually using it a lot more in this, and just utilizing it in all these different ways and stuff. And then you see Cheetah's character and how she's not graceful, and she's just very rough with people, and you never really...
You think the cat would be more graceful, though?
You would think so, but she's just so vicious, I guess. But you can definitely tell in this one, just between the two of them, that Wonder Woman makes a conscious effort not to hurt people when she's fighting. She's trying not to injure people or kill them, for the most part. And then you just see the opposite of that, and you never really noticed that before until then. So I did like that part of it.
Oh, yeah. And speaking of Wonder Woman being graceful, spoiler alert for this whole thing, I suppose. One also thing I kind of liked is throughout the movie, you can see Wonder Woman kind of start to lose her powers. And for me, the whole time, I did it beforehand, Cheetah, she pretty much wished to be like Wonder Woman. And it always had me thinking that it was because Cheetah was stealing her powers. And then, it comes down to it as that the stone, when you wish for it, it's like a monkey's paw. It takes something from you, kind of, unless it gives it to Cheetah. Or sometimes it takes from you, sometimes it takes for the stone itself. It's a bit odd that way.
That part was so unclear, because I thought that too. I thought that when she wished to be like her, it was taking some of that power away from her, but
it wasn't. It was Cheetah losing her humanity, and Wonder Woman was losing her powers because she wished for her boyfriend back.
Yeah.
Steve.
But they also mentioned, and it was just a really quick thing that they mentioned, that it takes away the thing that's the most valuable to you. So her powers and who she is as Wonder Woman is more important to her than Steve. And that's such a cool idea. And they just mentioned it so fast and so in passing, and they didn't do anything.
Was it the most valuable thing?
Yeah, that's what they said. There was a line in it where they said that.
Or was that when it was the stone, not necessarily when it's Max Lord?
Yeah,
Because Max
it
Lord
said that's what the stone's supposed to do.
It's what the stone does when you wish on the stone, but when Max Lord was the stone, he was just kind of taking whatever he wanted. It's not necessarily the thing that's most important to that person. He's like, yeah, I'll take your health.
And see, that's where it just there's no.
He's like, oh, I'll take your lands or your oil. I don't have any oil.
It's
Fine,
not
I'll take
that
your
you
guards.
have to have like a million rules, but it's, you know, there were like no rules for this. There was just so many things that it was so unclear what was supposed to be happening.
Yeah. And like, oh gosh, cut.
Another thing I think I liked about this movie was, I don't know, I just like Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman. She's just so fun to watch, and she's just really embodies that whole character that I think she's really the best part of the movie.
Yeah, for sure. And I like that they didn't overshadow her character with the other lead males as they do in many other superhero movies. But another thing, though, is she seemed pretty weak letting go of Steve. And it was like Steve that had to be like, let me go. It's okay. Like, I give you permission, pretty much. And it seemed like he needed to push her to get rid of it versus like her letting him go healthily.
That's true.
It seemed like the woman main character needed to be saved by the male, not main character.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a thing. And I also didn't really like how, not that you have to have him like turn to dust or something, like it's like, you know, Avengers or anything like that, but she just literally walks away from him and you don't see what happens to him. And I think it would have been so much more impactful if he would have like kind of slowly started to disappear, or like his face goes back into the face of that guy and that guy's like, oh, where am I? And like all this stuff. It would have been better.
Well, tying back to like the first part of what I'm saying, like things that are completely unnecessary and could have been cut out, like Steve did not need to be like transformed from a guy like Gal Gadot like only sees like as Steve, but he's actually like another guy. Like he like possessed the guy's body or something, and he's like, oh cool, like I got this little apartment, and she's just like, oh yeah, I'll sleep with you, no big deal. Like there's no like moral quandaries here of this guy is using somebody else's body, and what happened to that guy like in the meantime. It just didn't need to happen.
I mean, he probably lost his job, and
the stone could have just had Steve just randomly appear, you know, and that would have been a funny little comedic relief that like Steve just plops in the middle of the street like butt naked or something, and that
would have been hilarious because there's like that naked scene in the first one that's so funny, and that would actually be really funny.
Yeah, and then he's like, what is this? Where am I? Oh gosh! And he has to like try and like, you know, like get clothes from a homeless land, like figure out like what year it is and try and find Gal Gadot that way.
Yeah.
Versus be like, oh yeah, I just looked you up in the phone book of this apartment of this dude's body I was possessing. It's like,
yeah, and he was pretty overwhelmed by like everything that was going on, so I kind of find it weird that he was able to figure that part out. And I think another part of this movie that I really didn't like, that was such a huge misstep, was they didn't really use like an 80s soundtrack at all. Besides the clothes,
right.
There were really almost no 80s references.
Because like I was pumped when I saw that trailer with that 80s music.
Yeah,
that was awesome.
And it sounds so good, like just with everything, and they just didn't do it at all. I mean, the score is really good, but every scene just had the score in it, and it just made it not as fun.
It makes it melodramatic.
Yes.
Not fun, yeah.
Mm-hmm. So this one wasn't really as fun as the first one.
Because having an epic score is good for like those impactful moments, you know, like when she's like trying like to tell everyone like, hey, just use the truth, and she's trying to get everyone to like renounce their wishes. Like that's when you need a score, right? That's not like when you do like play that funky music, white boy, like, you know.
For sure, like when she's leaving Steve and all those serious things.
Yeah, I think the rest of the movie, it needs. There's lots that the '80s had to offer, and I feel like they just did it with the clothes, and that's about it.
And the mall, I guess.
Yeah, even then.
And even then, yeah, it didn't really pop out as like very, they could have just done so much more with the color and things like that too. And I think the movie would have been so much better without Max Lord at all. Without his son, I mean, that's just so many characters. It would have been so much better if you spent half or even more than half of the movie with her being friends with Cheetah's character and like getting to know her, and them actually discovering, trying to figure out what this thing is.
Yeah.
And then towards the end, she starts to turn in. That's the main villain. That's
more
what
of a gradual.
That's what it could have been, and she still could have figured out you have to renounce it, or you know all these other things are going to happen. And Steve could have still been there, and all those things. So I just think the Max Lord thing, it makes the movie go from like 0 to 100 so fast because everything just turns into total chaos and it's such a huge scale. It just seems so ridiculous towards the end to me.
Yeah, it was pretty ridiculous.
I think smaller stakes actually would have been served a lot better in this, because she wasn't actually. It's not like in like Batman vs Superman where she's like fighting a monster, keeping it away from people. Like nothing that she was doing was gonna like stop any of that or save anyone. And it just made her feel like she wasn't really that much of a hero. And she just makes a little speech, and it's like, cool.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, like another good part of the movie though was when she was acting like a hero when she's like trying to stop Max Lord in his caravan. And then eventually, like the truck like flips over and she's flying in the air and like using her lasso trying to save like a kid in the street from getting ran over and stuff. And those action scenes are awesome.
They really were. They were really good, except for the last one.
Well, the last one, it was dark because it was CGI'd, and they didn't want like Cheetah like to be like a cat remake,
Like Cats, yeah.
Yes.
And I could see how that would be really hard to do after the Cats movie came out, and it was so bad. But yeah, I like Kristen Wiig as that character, but they just didn't. They didn't do enough with it. She didn't get enough time. And they had a good idea.
I know it's from a comic book, but it was too comic booky at some parts too. Like Kristen Wiig's character was too comically like a weirdo outcast, and everyone's just like super rude to her. I'm like, dude, does this actually happen? That like she's like dropping her papers and everyone's like, oh, I hate you, or she's like, hey, I'm looking for you for this one person, and she's like, hey, that's me. It's like, oh, nice to meet you. It's like, we've met like 7 times and like you've interviewed me and you hired me. And it's like, come on,
it's such a trope. And Chris Stuckman mentioned that like on his channel in his review, and he was saying that, I mean, that's so played out, and it really is. It's like Electro and Amazing Spider-Man 2, and there's just so many characters that are like that. They're just like ignored, and that's not good enough of a reason. Like it could have been good enough of a reason that she didn't feel like a sexy, like confident person in front of large groups of people, and that she didn't feel like she could show the personality that her friend knew she had to other people.
Yeah, or just show like her lack of confidence, like giving like a speech like on a research paper or something that she did. And like her kind of choking at that, like
and that's a realistic
career.
Thing. Yeah, and that makes more sense. That it's more like an internal thing, and maybe one person's mean to her. I don't know, and then that's the person she goes after.
The boy she likes just doesn't notice her. I mean, that happens all the time too.
That's the thing about this movie is I wanted to like it so bad because the first one was so good, and I love the Wonder Woman character in these movies, and I love Gal Gadot playing her, and I just wish that it would have been so much better, because when we first saw it, I was like, oh, I think it's like a B, because I wanted it to be, and I knew it wasn't. It's like, oh, it's like a B-. I'm like, no, it's not.
Yeah. What did I say? It was a C- or something?
Yeah, because it's definitely not the worst movie I've ever seen, or by any means at all. It's just the thing that gets so frustrating is you could see how much better it could have been, and that's something that also makes a movie bad, is when you have so many opportunities and you don't take any of them.
I'd say it's worth a watch. I don't think I'd pay to see it again, or in the first place. I wouldn't recommend paying to see it. But if someone's like, hey, Wonder Woman's on Netflix or something, like, do you want to watch it? And it's like, and you're hungover, you're like, yeah, I'd watch it.
Yeah, I think it's definitely something that you could just put on, but I just don't see it being anybody's favorite.
Oh yeah, nobody's gonna be like, yeah, this is my favorite movie of all time.
I mean, some people will. I mean, it's okay to like movies and all those things, but it's just like, the first one was just so much better. It was so much funnier. It was just...
Oh yeah, definitely.
It was just so much better. So, I mean, I hope that in the next one, which they're planning on making, that things improve, and we'll see where the whole universe goes, because it's kind of all up in the air a little bit at this point. Lots of drama and stuff. So yeah, I just wish so many things would have been different, which is so disappointing, but I think it was watchable at the very least, I guess. But that was just one that we saw together, and we just had a lot of like thoughts, and the more that we kind of were stopping and thinking about the movie, the more we found things that we thought could have been different, or things that we liked and didn't like and stuff like that. So let us know in the comments if there was anything that you liked or disliked about the movie or anything like that, and we'd love to hear from you guys. And we'll see you next time.
See you later.